Welcome everybody to the latest edition of the LGFA show. My name is William Harmon, National Ladies Football Development Officer with a remit for coach education. On my left I have Siobhan Woods, Dublin Senior Ladies Footballer and also a PhD researcher in DCU. And on my right I have my colleague Vincent Whelan, Growth and Participation Development Officer with the LGFA. So welcome both to today's show. I suppose the aim of today's show will be kind of looking at, I suppose, over the last number of weeks, we've been looking at how do we create a positive coaching environment. Today we'll be looking specifically at effective communication in terms of how our coaches communicate with each other to ensure that our players, I suppose, can be the best they can be. So if you have any comments, feedback, please, we'd love to hear from you. You can use my email, william.harmon@lgfa.ie. So if you have any comments or feedback or you want any thoughts after the show, please share your thoughts on william.harmon@lgfa.ie. So, Siobhan, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
No problem at all. You played with Dublin, played Tipperary yesterday in Ballyboden. So how did good game? Draw in the end, yeah?
Good game for the spectator, I'd say. We might not be as happy. Difficult task come out after a couple of weeks training, but great to get started as always. So it was a draw in the end. We probably could have snatched it, but a draw might have been a fair result. There's no time to dwell on it really. We're straight into the next game on Saturday, so it's good to get going. Lots to work on, and yeah, a big few weeks ahead, definitely.
Yeah, very exciting. Do you know, I always at the start of the year, you're always looking forward to the year ahead, but it's good to start with a good tough game and it sets you up for the year ahead, really, Siobhan, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's no easy games in Division 1, so you're straight into it and flat out, so exactly what you want. You can only be training for so long, so the games are what you want to be playing, so we're delighted to be back, really. Yeah.
I'm a Kerry man myself, sitting between, two dubs, on Saturday night, but I know, Siobhan, your mom, you're saying half Kerry, half Cork on both sides, mom and dad, were I right in saying that?
Yeah, my dad is from Kerry, from Milltown in Kerry, so he's pure Kerry man, born and bred. But my mum is from Cork, so I'm the only one kind of changing the tune at this stage.
Oh, good. So I just
first generation Dubs, yeah.
I was just highlighting, I suppose, where
we don't call ourselves half anything. We just call ourselves
I just wonder where all the talent came from, Siobhan. I was just kind of get to nail it there. But Siobhan, look, I know you're, as I outlined earlier on, you're a PhD researcher in DCU, and you're doing, can you just tell us a bit about your research, what the title of that is, and I suppose what you try to achieve from it, and just what are the kind of results that came from that, Siobhan, if you don't mind sharing that.
Yeah, so I'm doing research in DCU School of Psychology. I'm only in halfway through my second year of what would be a 4-year project. So the aim of the research overall is to look at kind of on a broad level on athlete burnout in Gaelic Games, so men and women. So burnout is probably sometimes misconstrued in that it's looked at kind of like overtraining, but it's a psychological syndrome purely, and it has 3 dimensions. So there's feeling a sense of exhaustion, so you're physically and emotionally tired. You feel like you're not achieving what you want to achieve in your sports, or a reduced sense of accomplishment, and then a sense of sport evaluation, so your sport might not matter to you as much as it once was. So that's kind of what someone who is feeling burnt out might be experiencing. So the aim of the research is to look at kind of how those 3 dimensions of burnout might interact with each other in an athlete, so maybe what might come first and what might follow, but equally to look at what are the kind of key variables that might put someone at risk of developing burnout, and equally what might actually protect a player from developing burnout. So how can we look at, over time, can we identify different risk factors that's making this player more likely to experience those kind of symptoms versus the player who's thriving and isn't experiencing those. So are there different things, like we're looking at their stress levels, we're looking at what drives their commitment to their sport. So are they committed because they really want to play and they're enjoying it, or are they committing because they feel like they don't have another option? Or maybe what's motivating them to play? Is it their drive to improve as a player, or is it just kind of they want to get free gear? You don't know. So could it be, we're looking also at the environment they're in. So in terms of the management team and the kind of whole environment they're training within, is the emphasis there generally on winning and performance, or is it on kind of improving as a player and improving your skills? We're looking at kind of, can we develop almost a model of what will make a player kind of most at risk of developing burnout versus what kind of could we promote as almost an ideal scenario for reducing the chance of that.
Yeah, that's interesting, I suppose, because when you mention burnout, I suppose you always think of, it's a physical sense, you know what I mean? You're feeling tired, whatever. But it's actually, it's actually emotional and psychological sense. It's very interesting. And what were the kind of findings you kind of came up with in terms of, okay, what are the factors that promote burnout, and what are the factors that probably assist with that in terms of, I suppose, keeping girls involved in our games? And it was for boys and girls. You actually did boys and girls in your study, am I right in saying that,
both.
Siobhan?
So that's the idea is we're going to collect data at 6 time points over 2 years. So we've only just finished the third phase of data collection the first year. So we've just done some preliminary analysis of that kind of first phase of data collection. So we had 370 participants. So it was like 49% male, 51% female. So a good split overall and a good range of playing levels. But what we found kind of so far at that kind of initial level of analysis is what you might expect. So things like improved enjoyment of sport and enthusiasm to commit to the game, an environment where the development of the skill is promoted as opposed to comparison and competition, receiving social support from your significant others, feeling like you have valuable opportunities from your sport, and feeling like intrinsically motivated. So you're motivated to improve rather than to win or to kind of achieve. So those are the kind of key things that are putting players at a low risk of developing burnout. So players with those characteristics and in those environments are showing lower levels of burnout, so less likely to experience burnout. Whereas in contrast, players who have kind of high levels of stress, players who feel like they have a lot of competing priorities, so things that are kind of conflicting with their sport participation, and that could be other sport participation, it could be job or school or anything outside of that. Players that feel like they kind of shouldn't really quit because they've already invested so much time and it might look bad or other people would be disappointed. Those players are more likely to experience higher levels of burnout. So we're going to drill into those a bit more and see maybe the impact of those over time, and if players can reverse those or if there's a change in environment. So we're hoping to obviously get a lot more insight into those over time. But for now, even at this point, it's really interesting. And one kind of thing we're also looking at is around a gender dimension of whether players feel like their gender has impacted their experience of playing Gaelic games. So we just asked that question, do you think your gender has impacted your experience? And I think 85% of female athletes said yes, and I think maybe 10% of male athletes said yes. And of those female athletes, 95% said that impact had been negative, as opposed to 99% of male athletes said that impact was positive. So
in terms of that, Siobhan, so could you just expand that? So in terms of their gender and impact, what do you mean by that? Do you know what I mean? So what do you mean, like, you know, what's about their gender having an impact? What do you mean by that?
So that was something we were kind of putting out as a feeler question, and we're following up this questionnaire phase with an interview phase. So we're hoping to delve into that a bit more deeply in the interview phase in the coming months. But what we worded the question around was around access to facilities, support, financial support and resources. So it was a general question, so we definitely need to explore that a lot more qualitatively through interviews and ask people about that. But just interesting on that surface level to say people do feel like they're having an impact. And interestingly, players that did feel like their gender impacted their playing experience were more likely to show to feel exhausted or that aspect of burnout. So it's definitely interesting.
I suppose, Vinny, if you don't mind bringing in here, it's very interesting, Siobhan, because when I was reading your research, you know, I suppose we did our own research from the LGFA point of view, and I know, Vinny, you're involved heavily with the Gaelic for girls, myself with the Gaelic for teens. It's very interesting how there's a correlation between the LGFA and what we did ourselves in our own research and Siobhan's research. Can you just give us kind of the similarities that's coming across there, Vinny?
I suppose, yeah, the similarities, like, I mean, the Gaelic for Girls programme is about not only recruitment, which I suppose which is one strand of it from ourselves, but I suppose it's about educating coaches and making coaches understand that the culture that they create within the group can impact hugely, not only on the girls that are there, but potential girls who may come and join the group. And I suppose the burnout factor, I suppose one huge thing that Siobhan touched on there is a devaluation of the sport. And, like, I mean, when girls get to that certain age, I mean, they're coming into secondary school from age 12 and upwards, they're meeting new peers, and certain things start to become more valuable in their life. So I suppose from that end of things, we can certainly educate coaches in the Gaelic for Girls programme as to all these variables that might impact that, and just highlight to them, and they might be able to then go across and communicate that to the parents, to the players themselves, and say, look, you know, we know the girls are at a certain stage in their lives, they might be changing school, they might be meeting a whole new peer group, and just to be aware that all these factors may impact the devaluation of their sport. So I suppose from the Gaelic for Girls perspective, we'd be looking at maybe having a chat with the coaches and just making them aware that they should highlight these things to parents and indeed to the players themselves.
Okay, if I just bring it on, so Siobhan, I'm really looking forward to probably when you come to the completion of your research and stuff, you know, and listening to what's going on. But it's very interesting stuff at the moment. And we spoke about the environment here, guys, and the coach. And this specific show is about the effective communication, and I suppose the importance of communication between the coaches in clubs, which is vitally important. So we have girls that are playing other sports. Okay, because they're not only playing ladies football, they're playing ladies soccer, they could be playing basketball, they could be doing whatever. Talk to me in terms of the importance of communication. Like, what's the best for coaches to be doing in their clubs? Do they just look after their own girl, or what is the advocation in terms of, should they be communicating with other coaches? What's your thoughts on that, Siobhan, in terms of the importance of that communication? If we're talking about burnout and talking about, understanding that, they have other commitments, the communication between coaches, what's your thoughts on that in other sports, should I say?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a difficult one to kind of to account for across sports. I think the more people are aware of the factors that can impact players wanting to drop out from sport, then the more we can have kind of a one-size-fits-all approach across coaches. It shouldn't really matter what sport you're in. These will apply to kind of, generally speaking, team sports across the board. If you have people who are enjoying what they're doing, if they're enthusiastic about committing. But as a coach, if the focus is on, as we said, improving the skill of a player, improving the player as an athlete, then the decision making around, I don't want her to go to that instead of here, should be less impacted if you're focused on, well, she's going to improve as an athlete if she goes to basketball training or if she's at football. Whereas if you're focused on winning, you want your best player at your match rather than focusing on developing the player as an athlete. So I think if the focus comes back to developing everyone in terms of their skills and their kind of ability to play and perform, that should be applicable across sports. You're always going to be improving as an athlete across sports. But once you're focused on winning your match with your team and wanting your players, I think it's difficult to get a kind of coherent message across
and I suppose that comes back to, I suppose, Vinny, I can bring you in here, and that I suppose if coaches are probably just worried about their own ladies football team and that tunnel vision and what goes on, probably not understanding what other sports could bring to develop their players in their own sport. Like, do coaches just need to be, I suppose, open-minded to that and understand that, what, they're getting other skills in other sports that could actually enhance them, and that, what, that's important. But the communication, I don't know, is there much communication going on with coaches in other sports? I don't know, Vinny, maybe I could be right or wrong, but I just know that in my own club, we're very lucky that we have ladies football, we have men's football, we have basketball, we have soccer, but we're very, I suppose, understanding that they have other sports, so that we kind of work around that. All coaches are similar anyway, that they we work at that they're not overloaded, that they play soccer one night, maybe football another night, or it might be a situation in terms of we start the season, we finish the season, that will probably cohere and I suppose link into one to the other. What's your thoughts on that, Vinny? Like, should coach be 10 players? This is only one sport only. If you go to that sport, you're not with me. Or what's your thoughts on that in general? In that, I just want to.
Absolutely, not. We should be encouraging kids and players of all ages to play all sports across the board. Most of the skills from other sports are transferable. If it's not the skills on the pitch, it's the communication skills that they might pick up off another coach that they will then bring onto your field of play. So it's certainly something that I would encourage. Like, I mean, we were all young once. We all played all sports across the board in school. Certainly myself, I would have played soccer and basketball in school. I did martial arts as well. Anything that was, and that certainly helped me with my discipline on the field of play. It's not an invasion sport. It doesn't even resemble Gaelic football, but still it helped me with my discipline on the pitch. And I suppose that's just one thing that can be transferable. Coaches need to be able to speak to other coaches as well. If your player plays rugby, if your player plays soccer, to be able to communicate with that coach, it just might be via WhatsApp, or set something up where the coaches of the under 12s or the coaches of this certain age group, and just communicate. Okay, we're going to train on a Tuesday and Thursday. You might train on a Monday and Wednesday, or such and such took a knock during our game, and she's going to have to sit out today. What that does, it creates a coherence, so a player doesn't feel like they're being pulled in this direction or that direction. And it's all for the player welfare. It's all for the player doesn't get burnt out, that they don't feel that their sport is becoming devalued. They will stick at your sport if you value the player's development, not what the player is going to give you in terms of winning or anything like that. So I suppose you need to look at what you can give them, and they in the long term will repay not you but the club in general.
That's a good point, I suppose. Siobhan, from your own experience, I suppose you would have played a lot of sports growing up, and you would have came across some, I suppose, even McBone at the moment, and you have other great coaches. And growing up, I'm sure you played a lot of other sports. Can you tell us about the experience of your coaches? Would they have had that interaction? Would they have promoted you to play other sports? But what the interaction between the coaches, did did they make the decision for you, or did they make decisions to make it easier for you, shall I say? Do you know? So what's your experience on that, Siobhan? I suppose experience that over the last number of years.
Yeah, I actually probably didn't play as many sports with other people. I was very football focused. I played hockey quite a lot in school, which I loved. I really enjoyed that. But probably the biggest kind of balancing I had to do was between multiple football teams. So even particularly when I was called up to the senior team and I was still on the minor team. So that was my first year with the Dublin minors, I think. And then I was called up with the senior team that same year, and Tommy Brown was the senior manager, and he was amazing at communicating with the minor manager, and I never had to worry if I was to be here or there. It was just told, it was either through my parents or whatever, you're to be here this night and here the next night, and it was fine. It was no issue. And then there was a change man the next year, and there probably wasn't the same type of communication, so it can be different then. And it was probably, I don't know if it was to give more freedom, but it was sometimes left for me to decide. And I think as a younger player, that can be difficult to do. You want to kind of please everyone. So I think from my experience, even with clubs, I know there's girls now who would obviously continue on into club championship, especially when I was at college and playing with Dublin. There was always great communication between the managers, and it was set out at the start of the year. The managers would speak to each other and say, you have them X nights, we have them X nights. I think I've seen other counties where it hasn't been that similar, and there might have been some disagreement or have to go every night, and that's just not feasible either. So I think from my own experience, whatever I found to work best was when, as a player, you're probably removed from the equation in terms of decision making, and you're told when you have to be here, when you have to be there. And that probably, I think, more so because the decisions often happen for younger players. So as a younger player, you might be less likely to kind of speak up and be able or be kind of willing to make those decisions. So it might be different for older players who are in those positions, but I think it's often younger players who are kind of committed to multiple sports or multiple teams. And I think in those cases, once the managers can make that decision and there's no hard feelings, it doesn't feel like there's any difficulty there, I think it can be perfect for everyone.
Yeah, you hit a very good point there. I suppose there's another factor, key stakeholder, the parents, and I suppose who makes the decision. I suppose the coaches create the environment to allow the parents and the player to make the best decision, really, in other sports, in that sense, in that communication. A lot of clubs, I suppose, would be kind of saying, Joan, the players playing multiple age groups in their own club, because they mightn't have the players, they might need a girl to push up a grade. So I suppose what we're learning here is in terms of the communication internally in the club, and the communication of coaches internally is probably even a more important factor. So Vinny, in terms of like the Gaelic for Girls and Gaelic for Teens, we're trying to promote that aspect of that internal communication. I just want to get your thoughts on the importance of that, and if you have any examples yourself, please share.
Yeah, as you said there, William, the internal communication is a huge thing. And I suppose if you're in the same club, you can't have, I suppose, kind of certain mini republics, as I like to call them, forming. Where one coach will say, well, this is my team, and I'm going to drag the players up from below to play, and and that could be at the detriment to a player of that certain age group. But they mightn't realise for them wanting to win at their particular age group, they might be playing a player who's played 3 or 4 matches already. And Siobhan touched on it there about that player, making a decision and wanting to please everybody. And it mightn't be they mightn't want to do that, but they're thinking, there always seems to be an importance on the year above. If I can get to the year above and I have to please them, and won't I look great? But the coaches within the club need to communicate with each other and say, is that player free? How many times have they played this week? How many times have they played that month? If a player has played too many times, it might be a matter of saying, if we are short, because we should be playing our own players first if they are at that age group, but if we are short, maybe another player and another player and have a rotation system, so maybe they all get the chance to play up. Because I certainly know from when I was younger, you would feel that little bit extra special playing up. We didn't have huge numbers in Clontarf when I was growing up, and I know it is, yeah, it doesn't happen very often. But in Clontarf we didn't have massive numbers. And I remember wanting to please the managers for 2 years up. I played for my brother's team on alternate days, so I'd play for my team on a Saturday and his team on a Sunday. And you did it, and it could have been at the detriment to yourself, but you did it to try and please somebody. So I suppose internally, coaches need to establish those communication links with each other and have that dialogue where there's a system in place. And if we put certain systems in place, there is no excuse for that being the cause of a player burning out or a player not wanting to play anymore. The Gaelic for Girls, I suppose, in another aspect, and I touched on it there earlier, is a recruitment tool as well. So it also ensures that if you are low in numbers at under 9s, 10s, 11s or 12s, that these extra players are coming into the club, and that's going to stop players from the years above, trying to pull your players up. They will have the numbers. You will have the numbers. And I suppose that's why we use it as such an incredible tool, that we will look at it and say, this team now has an amount of players that they can rotate the players within the squad. They're not being pulled up, they're not being pulled down, and therefore they're not burning out.
Yeah, I suppose just in my own club there, we have a system in place whereby every 2 months all the coaches in the club get together. So from under sixes up to senior, all the coaches get together and we just discuss football. We just discuss, well, how are things going, what's this player, what's that player, how can we say so? The importance of just even communicating and facilitating that every 2 months, on the last Thursday of every 2 months, we were all the coaches going to sit down and just have a chat about football. And I think that's important. And have that understanding of, well, what if a player comes up? So, like in our own club, I know, if a player comes up, right, so we play girls of our own age first. So if they're under 16s, then all the girls under 16s get the game time. But if we're caught for numbers and a girl has to come up from the 14s, then the under 16s start before her. So there's that understanding. But also, another one that could be there is within their own age band, girls playing with us. So you might have 2 teams under 16. And some, I like to get your thoughts on this. Some teams have massive numbers and they have 216 teams. So do you pick at the age or do you pick at the stage of development? And I know in my own club, last year, we went with the age. We went to say, okay, if you're the oldest, you start in this team. And if you're younger, say if you're 16, you're here in this team. If you're 15, you're in this team. But we felt a sense of entitlement coming in, that the girls who were of the age, well, you know what? We'll always start there. So we kind of brought in the stage of development whereby we can say, look, there's no point having girls here and not getting game time or not touching the ball but she's probably better off here. She'll develop more as a player. So I'd like to get your thoughts on this, Siobhan. What's your thoughts on that kind of, I suppose, process, or what's your, would you have come across that, or what's your experience of that, or what's your thoughts in general on that?
Yeah, I actually hadn't heard of the idea of splitting it by kind of the older half, but it's an interesting one, definitely. I think it's definitely one that could be good for younger age groups where there's still so much development to happen and you're not really playing competitive games per se. It's those kind of go games or the fun games. So I think, but I agree with you when you get to an older age, that kind of level of development, because there can be huge gaps the older, and equally when you're younger, but those gaps can close. But when you get to that 15, 16 years of age, those gaps start to widen. And even in our own adult team in the club, we had 2 teams for years and then we struggled with numbers. We've gone back to having 1 team, and there can be huge gaps there. And there's people that are training consistently but maybe not, like you said, go out in a match and not get much of a chance. So we're looking to now go back to 2 teams, just because you want people to play the game. That's the whole point. People are training, and to, as we said, to kind of, if you feel like you can kind of accomplish what you want to, so that sense of accomplishment in your sport, it needs to be at the level that you're able for. So I think you're going to feel valued and like you're accomplishing what you can when you're playing at a level that you're capable for. Equally, it's always difficult to have to divide anything A by B, but if you're on that lower level, to have that kind of the cohesiveness between the 2 teams, I think, and make sure it's not kind of a significant divide, and giving that group an opportunity to strive to move upwards. So kind of that level of, once you have that level of fluidity between the 2, I think that's probably the best way to do it.
And I like that, because what we noticed in our own club was, obviously, every parent wants their kid to play on the so-called, the perceived A team or Maria, the old, whatever it may be. But what we're starting to introduce, I suppose, in our own club is that we're starting to probably communicate a bit better with parents. So if we're going to make a decision, if coach is going to make a decision, we're actually going to engage with the parents. Say, listen, we feel that, Mary could play here. No problem. She can play with her, at the age, at the 13-year-olds or the 14-year-olds. But, she mightn't get much game time touches of the ball. But if she plays here, she'll get loads of touches of the ball. She'll be more involved in the game from a development perspective. She'll probably develop faster. And we can move her up there when she improves. And actually, last year we tried it, whereby we tried that process and we engaged with the parents. And the parents totally understood it. Totally understood the logic behind what we were trying to achieve, what we were trying to do, the bigger picture. And it worked a treat. So I just, that learning experience, I thought just it was something that we tried out, whereby, and that's the question I would ask clubs, is that what is your communication, coaches to coaches, but also coaches with parents, explaining what you're trying to do. I think that's a big one. I know from our perspective, we're trying to promote that, but if you have any comments on that, Vinny, Joe?
Yeah, I suppose in a sporting sense, we have 2 sets of role models. We have our parent or guardian, and we also have our coach. So they're the two people that we look to for our advice, for our guidance in what to do. And I mean that what the point that you make there, William, is unbelievable, and it's something that has cropped up when I was reading about how Barcelona run their academy, and they do it on size and weight. They don't do it on age. And I suppose we don't really have the manpower in the Ladies Gaelic Football Association to do something like that. So the concept kind of looks like the car plate registration at the moment, doesn't it? 201 and 202. So you're splitting them in kind of age groups, because realistically in the age group system that we have at the moment, a girl could be playing against a girl who's 11 months and 364 days older than her. So she could be a lot more developed, both psychologically and physically, and therefore she has the better of it. So that's a brilliant point that you make. I mean, because it could be a training session where, you know, rules like Go Games rules are not being implemented maybe by the coach, and the one player, the younger player, mightn't be getting a touch because they are marking somebody who's effectively a full year older than them. So it's a brilliant concept, and it's something I think clubs, you know, should be emailing in and maybe requesting a bit more information from you on that, because we have to look at a different way of thinking on this. We have to, because it is a huge factor in drop off of young girls playing ladies football, that, you know, they're grouped in wrong groups, or else they're taking guidance from their parents or guardian, who might be saying to them, you know, that coach is after putting you on the B team, when realistically it's not the B team. It's an age group based segregation, so to speak. Yeah. So it's a stage of development. So it's very, very worthwhile us maybe probing into that a little bit more and pulling and teasing that out and getting a bit more information on it.
Yeah. And I suppose what we're not saying is, you know, you could take that if you want as a loophole of, we stream the best here now because of stage development. Well, we brought the group players here. It's not necessarily that. It's really thinking about that. I think, you know, thinking about that. Okay, well, how do we, if we have two teams, well, how are we going to, you know, split them up in terms of stage development, in terms of the girls are making the best, you know, are in the best position they can to develop as players, to improve and develop. That's just about they can improve their develop. Or do you go by age? But I just saw in my own club, just a sense of entitlement came in. That a girl didn't have the same commitment, wasn't training all the time, didn't have the same desire. So why does that girl, just because she was the age, play before the girl who came training every night? I just thought it was a very good learning experience from our point of view, and just something I think we need to explore a bit more. But also maybe have to look at our game opportunities as well, as you say, which is going to look down the road. So look, what's next for you, Siobhan? What's next for you in terms of your research and where you're going and things like that? What's next for yourself in terms of your research and where you're going?
So yeah, busy at the minute. So I'm just finishing off the third phase of data collection. So I'll have to start looking at that data again and putting that all together. And then there's another phase not long down the line, and then another and another. So that's keep on going. And then I'm going to look to start recruiting players for interview in the next month or so. So really trying to get more detail on what it's really like to experience this. So we have the kind of data on it now, but what does that feel like to experience? And kind of as a player, what are you going through if you are at the highest of highs, if you're nowhere near these kind of levels of burnout or don't feel any kind of negative experience? What might that be like, and why is your experience so great? What makes it so great? Why do you enjoy it? And then versus someone who maybe not have had such a great time and might not be enjoying it as much, and what kind of is contributing to that. So trying to get a better understanding of kind of how we can create an environment that is the best for players, or what we can promote as being a kind of a good environment for players. So looking at that in the next couple of years. So yeah, it's kind of, whenever I tell, everyone's always asked me, are you nearly done? So it takes a bit longer than you might imagine, but I'm still really enjoying it. So I have another kind of 2.5 years to kind of get through all this. So I'm hoping to kind of have my data collection finished by the end of next year, and then really kind of getting into the meat of the analysis, and I can just be calculating things forevermore and don't talk to anyone.
And Siobhan, in terms of your I suppose your group to get you, I suppose to analyse and to study, how do you go about selecting those people joins there? How do you identify your or should I say is your group that you kind of, you know, research with and stuff? How do you identify those, or is there anything we can help you with, or do you know, how does that work? In terms of
participants?
Yes.
So I've actually, because I put out that call and I was in touch with you guys initially when I was putting out that initial call, but now that I've got that first group of participants, I actually am just following those same people along now. So I'm not looking for new participants. So the aim is to follow these same people over 2 years and see what changes in their experience, so we can analyse kind of how their levels of burnout might fluctuate, how they might have a changing environment, stress levels, and equally to pinpoint those to maybe certain times in the season. So it's more so now, I just love to keep being in contact and getting kind of the findings out as much as possible. So that's the aim. We're trying to kind of figure out what we can and then kind of share whatever we can with people.
That's fantastic. The research is like, it's hugely important. Because when I was reading the research, I was like, wow, this is fantastic. Because it kind of just informs what we're doing is probably we're going down the right path, which is great, Siobhan, because you need that data, don't you? Because sometimes you kind of, opinion doesn't matter anymore. You need to have the data behind that. And I suppose for yourself, Vinny, Gaelic for Girls is starting up shortly. Looking forward to that. So can you tell us where we're next with that one?
Yeah, Gaelic for Girls is coming up very fast. We have 30 clubs in 21 counties selected, so there was huge, unprecedented interest this year in it. Clubs around the country are really kind of figuring out that this is the way forward, both as a recruitment tool for them, to again alleviate some of the issues that we spoke about, and not having to play girls from different teams within their club. And I suppose also we've added in the coach education kind of element to it as well this year. So we're going to be engaging with the coaches and the coordinators a little bit more this year. We've changed the format, so it's going in a 4-week coaching block. Then there's 2 weeks of coach education over the Easter period, and then there's 4 weeks of coaching that resumes again in a format that we are working on at the moment. And yeah, it's an exciting time. Like, I mean, if you're one of the clubs that's selected, it's a really exciting time for you. There's no recruitment tool in any association, as far as I know, that can have the success. I mean, I'm new to the association over the last 6 months, but I was certainly reading back over the recruitment figures from past years, and I have worked in a promotion sense before, in a sporting context, and there was, if I had the Gaelic for Girls tool at my disposal, it would have been far more effective. So yeah, we're hugely looking forward to it, and we've our ambassadors Jenny Higgins and Amy Mackin, and we're looking forward to working with them, and we're going to get out around the clubs, and yeah, it's going well.
Well, listen, guys, thank you very much. I suppose our key topic here was looking probably the whole area of, that effective communication. And if just a few things just to wrap up on that, the importance of our coaches in our club at all age groups, just getting together on a regular basis and having a chat about the football in your club and how you communicate to ensure that the girls get the best coaching experience. We also looked, I suppose, at the other area of other sports and the importance of other sports, and that it's okay to play other sports because it does complement, but understanding the workload that's involved. And I suppose communicating with those coaches, and don't be afraid to pick up the phone and say, listen, I'm involved with the girls, you have X, Y, and Z with you, can we work together on this? And that's just that open communication. And we also kind of looked at the players that move between those age groups. So you have the girls who might come from a younger age group to the older age group, and clubs is kind of having a clarity about, well, how is that going to work? How is that going to work? And also with the communication to the parents, and also within a band. So if you have 2 teams in one age group, okay, well, do you go by age, or do you go via stage of development? And I think that, again, is down to every club and what they feel is best for them. But the key to that is the communication with the parents, and the parents understanding what you're trying to do and how you're going to go about it. So look, we hope you enjoyed the last few shows regarding creating a positive environment. If you have any questions, queries, comments, feedback, one-to-one, we'd be more than like to engage with you. William Harmon at lgfa.ie is my email. I'd be more than happy to engage and listen to thoughts and ideas and examples that are going on. A lot of good examples going on around the country. I want to thank Siobhan Woods.
Pleasure.
Very insightful. Best luck with your research.
Thanks, man.
We'll give you 2.5 years. We'll bring you back in 2.5 years.
We'll be done by then. Don't give me any longer.
Yeah, and also I want to thank Vincent Whelan. Vincent's our growing participation development officer. Thank you, Vincent, for your insight now of that. So that's from me, William Harmon. This is the latest edition of the LGFA show. We'll see you next time. Thank you.